Hello, this is Ryan Riccitelli with asnews.net, and today I have Ben Wilson from Australia. Actually, I called him over in Australia, and I'm not sure what time it is over there, but Ben is one of the guys who's been traveling the world chasing waves, and he's one of the guys behind Spare Change. So why don't you introduce yourself, Ben?
Hey, my name's Ben. Like Ryan just said, I live in Australia, and it's like 4 in the morning here, which is all cool because I'm always up for a chat with Ryan and asnews.net.
4 in the morning, dude. I figured at 4 in the morning, last time I think it was 4 in the morning and I was hanging out with you, we were running from the authorities for some disturbances in one of the local bars here in Corpus Christi.
Yeah, I think we ended up in some boys' tour. I don't know what happened then, but it was pretty funny.
Well, you've been doing a lot of traveling, and, why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Actually, I've been doing heaps of traveling, and I've just come off probably what I'd say was probably the best trip I've ever had kiteboarding. I just spent 6 weeks in Fiji, just sampling everything I love to do, like fishing, surfing, and of course like epic kiteboarding. I had probably like 5 or 6 days over that whole time with probably 6 to 8 foot surf and 20 knots of wind, and it was just epic all time. Happiest kiting days of my life for sure.
Well, and you sent me some photos, and the stuff that you sent me was just freaking crazy. And you've really pushed the whole envelope on strapless riding and riding in the surf. And why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, always. Since I was young and growing up, surfing's been, what my life's always about. Surfing's dictated what I've always done, and I'm just so stoked now that I've found, that extension of surfing, which is, now I guess kite surfing. It gets me out there in every condition, and it just gives me that same sort of feeling. And now I'm not just traveling the world kiteboarding, I'm traveling the world kiteboarding and surfing, and having those two things together is just the ultimate. Like I said before, kite surfing is now for me, and I think it's going to be for a lot of people the ultimate extension of surfing.
Well, and with that said, do you ride any flat water still, or are you just primarily focused on the surf?
Yeah, for sure. I still ride flat water. I mean, that's really, for me, the roots, and it's got me where I am today, and I still love it. I don't put as much pressure on myself as I used to progress that side of the sport. I do it for more enjoyment of, when there is no surf, It's another thing where, it's still hard to get those days with good wind and waves together, and if there isn't, then I still love kiteboarding and still love jumping around and, like hitting rails or sort of whatever's going on. I still love it for sure.
Well, and where are you living in Australia, and what's the wind like there?
I'm living up on the sunny coast of Queensland, which is the east coast of Australia, and it's perfect for me. It's usually got swell. It doesn't get huge, but it's usually got some swell, and it's wind from the right, so that means it's all sort of front side for me most of the time, and the water's warm. Well,
and you live a lifestyle that a lot of people would love to emulate, and reality is your entire mission is to pretty much seek out new spots to ride, or I guess to kiteboard and to kite surf and to ride waves. And why don't you talk a little bit about some of your exploration missions that you've been on?
Yeah, I guess there's two big parts of my mission, and that is, like you said just then, is to search new epic spots to ride. But the other part is, I feel as though kiteboarding's given so much to me, and I know coming from a surfing background, I think I could give back to kiteboarding, and that's by bringing, by letting, surfers know, that there is this extension to what they're already doing, and it's something that could get them out there on the days it isn't so good for surfing. which I think is going to be great for the surfers, but also for kiteboarding, because it's going to make the industry bigger and grow, and, you know, like, to get surfers into the sport, it's going to progress it. So that's the other side of it. But as for my travels, you know, like, we've been hitting, you know, just the most epic spots. I've been pretty much going to where a lot of the tow surfers go, you know, like, trying to source out these waves, and it's awesome because a lot of the spots haven't been kited, and we don't even know if they can be kited, you know, whether the wind direction's right, or, you know, the wind gets in there, and the combination of wind and waves. So it's just like, you just get this huge build-up of excitement before you go and do these trips, because it's really just the unknown.
Well, and a lot of people, you know, they don't realize that you are out there and you're charging waves that are sometimes, you know, 20 feet, and no one's really ridden through those areas. And, you know, like, are you guys riding any special equipment, or how do you guys prepare for those situations?
Yeah, for sure. You know, like, we I spend so much time on my equipment, especially my boards these days. I used to focus a lot more on the kites when we were doing sort of more the flat water and freestyle stuff, you know, because you wanted a kite to, you know, like, turn really fast through certain things, or, you know, have good low end pull, or, you know, like a low aspect kite that's going to, you know, sit there solid, you know, when you're looking for pop or whatever. Now, with the waves, all I really want in a kite is a kite that goes upwind really well, and then it's just super stable in the air when I'm riding the wave, you know, a kite that you just don't have to worry about. So the emphasis for me is for sure more on the boards, you know, like, because I feel as though, you know, with the kites, you know, of course we're always progressing and trying to, you know, redefine the kite to make it work even better. But the kites that we're using right now, you know, all we're looking for is the upwind and the good stability, and, you know, we found that. So I spend a lot more time on my boards, which is also pretty well, you know, set too, because I've spent so many years surfing and tow surfing. So I just generally use my surfboards as I would surfing, and then when the waves get bigger, I use my tow boards.
Well, and what kind of kites are you riding? I mean, I know you're one of the main slingshot riders, and I know my listeners, they're really they really get stoked on hearing about, like, what you guys ride and how you rig. You know, basically, because you guys are out there on the front line.
Yep. For the last sort of 2 years, I've been riding full on the fuels, the slingshot fuels, and you know, they've been going awesome for me. At the moment, I'm working really close with Tony Lagoche and Dan O.C., who build our kites, and we're trying to, you know, redefine a kite and make a kite that you can use in all conditions. Meaning, like those more offshore conditions, it's really hard to find a kite that you can actually ride the wave properly in an offshore condition without getting, you know, pulled by the kite. So that's something, you know, that we're working on right now. And we're also trying to make that kite, you know, instead of traveling, you know, like with 5 different kites, it would be perfect, you know, to use 2 kites, you know, like you have a kite for when it's light wind and a kite for when it's strong wind, and that's something that we're working on at the moment. You'll find, you know, like certain kites will work better in certain conditions. Ideally and essentially, you know, the best thing to be would to be have a kite that works in all those conditions, so you don't have to be changing kites all the time, and that's something that we're working on at the moment.
Well, and a lot of people would say, well, hey, that's the bow kite. That's what you're talking about. And, like, what is your feedback on, you know, like, the turbo diesel and in terms of being that type of kite? Or
I don't think the turbo diesel is a kite that, you know, that I would use in the waves, nor a bow kite. You know, like, for me, there's always been 2 ways that you ride. You can ride the waves, and neither are right or wrong. It's just a personal preference of what you want to do. One way is where you use the kite, the power of the kite, to ride the wave, and the other way is you use the power of the kite to pull you into the wave, and then you use the power of the wave to ride the wave, like a surfer would, and then you use the kite, to get back out there and catch another wave. Using the bow kites that they have at the moment would be the first way. You're generally using the power of the kite to ride the wave. So a bow kite for me at this stage isn't really what I'm looking for. That's why I've sort of stuck to the more traditional sea kites, because I get, they're nice and easy and stable to unhook with, and I can sit them in the air, without great pressure on having to fly the kite whilst riding the wave. And that's something that, with this new kite that we're working on is sort of taking a bit from the bow kite and a bit from the traditional sea kite to make that sort of in-between kite that you can do both with, where you still have the huge amount of D-power and a kite that moves further up in the window, but still have that same feeling as the traditional sea kite.
Well, and have you spent any time on the slingshot octanes?
Yes, actually, I've spent over the last year a lot of time on the slingshot octane. It's actually a kite that I really do love in crazy conditions. For me, I always felt I got the same amount out of it as what I did out of a bow kite, but still with the traditional sea kite feel. I use the octane a lot when it gets like really, really windy and sort of gusty, crazy in sort of bigger surf, because you still have that same feel as like the fuel, but it just handles like the crazy conditions, the gusts, like a bow kite would.
Well, and spoken from a wave OG like Ben Wilson, this is some good information. And so, you're headed out. What's your next adventure? Where are you headed, on your next travel itinerary?
I'm actually going to go back to Fiji. I've just got home, and I'm just catching up with everybody and getting all my gear together. I've just got some new kites from Slingshot, which are these new wave kites that we're working on, and I am going to go to Fiji and test them for about the next month, because the conditions over there are just ideal for what I'm looking for. Well,
and you're talking about gear and stuff, and I know that we talked about flat water and we talked about kites, but I really want to talk about riding the boards, strapped or unstrapped. Like, what's your preference on that?
My preference is definitely both. I for sure like the feeling of being unstrapped. It's just it just gives me that identical feeling to surfing, because you can move your feet around. When you're coming off the bottom to do, like a floater or a reel on air, whatever you're doing, you can always change that, and it's just so rewarding, when you make, like some crazy turn or whatever. But having said that, the conditions aren't always ideal to ride strapless, and pretty much, the best way for me to explain it would be, like I ride strapless, as I would surfing, and then as, the wind or the waves pick up, that's when you're going to start, for me, that's when I start looking for more, like I would tow surfing, the waves are getting bigger, so then I'd get my tow board and use a jet ski, and that's when I'd switch over to the straps, and it's pretty much the same with kiting, and the same, like with the sizes of your surfboard, all surfers know that you have a quiver of surfboards. You have your small wave boards, and then as it gets bigger, you have your boards all the way through up to your gums, and that's the same with kiting too. Like I'll use my small boards when it's small, and then as the surf gets bigger, I'll just grab a longer board, and it's pretty much perfect because I use the same boards for kiting and surfing. And so that means only one quiver of boards whenever I'm going anywhere.
Well, we all, or not all of us, I should say, there's a lot of us who had the chance to check out Spare Change, and that's one of the videos that you are one of the producers of, and it's about your travels. And, what we see in Spare Change is a lot of the good footage. And, talk a little bit about some of the donuts that you take.
Oh, yeah, there's lots of donuts. With what we found out, like, we're like, okay, let's go make this movie, like, we want to make a series of movies, and Spare Change is the first of that, and that was to be, and is, the introduction of what's to come. We wanted to, show the kiteboarding world, what our plans are over the future, and sort of, let everyone know that, this is what we're going to be doing, and we're going to be making movies about riding waves with a kite. And we thought, okay, yep, let's just go and we'll just video and just make this video. But and we planned out all these spots and all this travel, and we're like, yep, okay, we'll go to like Shipsterns in Tasmania, and we'll video that and get good footage there. It just didn't work like that. We had so many trips, where we get like epic swell and no wind, or really good wind and no swell. And so a lot of the time we're trying to make stuff happen in those conditions, where the wind was too light or the swell was too big, for that wind or whatever. So some of the, some of the wipeouts and some of the days of just trying to get, the right shot, we were just getting absolutely punished. But that's a big part of, like what I love to do, and I love working really hard to get the right shots. And, the consequences that come with it just make it that much more rewarding, and was a big part of, like our video was that we worked so hard to get what we got. And, we felt as though, of course, you always want something better than what you've got. And, like we really wish, that we had got, like a lot more epic sessions. But it just keeps us, it just makes us more hungry for it next time.
Well, and you just talked about, the sequel to Spare Change, and when does something like that, when you see something like that coming out?
Well, we are working on it at present, like we're getting it all together and making our plans and shooting for it, always shooting for it. This next video is definitely going to be brought out when we have the footage that we are happy with. The last video was like, okay, we've got to get this out, now to show everybody what we're doing, and then we can work on getting the insane footage for the next video. So it's going to be dependent on that. We do have a time frame, and that's, videoing over the next sort of 10 months to a year, and then it'll be coming out then. Essentially, that was, that's the deadline, but of course it's going to be dependent on the footage that we get.
Well, and who are you filming this with? I mean, that also kind of leads into like who you're riding with. So, why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Definitely, we want to have more of a crew that we ride with in this video. We don't want it to be just about us guys. We want to bring, there's a lot of instead of Martin, Tobias, and I all traveling together. We've sort of branched off a little bit, and we're doing, still trips together, but we're going to do like our own trips, and, with other guys and, to other places and stuff. And so I want to incorporate, that into the video as well, and definitely into my part. Like I do a lot of traveling with Moy and Mauricio and Dre, and, those guys are really getting into the surfboard stuff as well, and we've been shooting a lot with Elliot, for his next movie, and I really want to work with those guys on our movie as well, and, do some trips with them, and I'm sure, Martin and Tobias have got, got their ideal trips and people to do stuff with too.
Well, who are some of the unknown soldiers that, you ride with that oftentimes don't get credit?
There's a few guys here in Australia that, like, as most people know, Australia's, like a real surf culture. Like everybody knows about surfing, and, like, it's such a big thing, when surfing's in town, like it's all over the news. So we have a lot of guys already here that have taken on the kiting and that are just riding surfboards, and they're ripping, and they're probably guys that, aren't out to get, exposure or whatever, and they're just happy doing what they're doing. But we've got a few guys here in Australia like Stewie Martin and Joel Beakus that are just absolutely killing it. You know, all they do is ride their surfboard, and they're good surfers, and they're just ripping.
Well, we got to wrap things up, and I just want to give you a chance to throw some shouts out to whomever you need to throw some shouts out to.
Yep. Well, of course, all my sponsors, and then, you know, like the Kiteboarder magazine, you guys are killing it. It's good to see that you guys have got South Coast Kiteboarding School up in Texas. I heard that's ripping. And then for sure, asnews.net. I'm stoked that you invited me on here, and I'm stoked to talk about this stuff, and I look forward to doing it again in the future.
Well, where can our listeners learn more about you or find information on you?
Definitely go to slingshotkiteboarding.com and alliancesurf.com. Alliance is a company that Jeff, Tobias, Martin Vara, and myself have started, and that's a big part of Spare Change and what we're doing. To find out about Spare Change and, you know, our next movies, go and check it out.
Well, all right, Ben. Well, be safe out there, and we'll get you back on the show soon.
Thanks heaps, Ryan. I really appreciate it. Stoked to talk with you again.
All right, hang out on the line.